Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of the Bible. Tonight we're going to look at a psalmist assurance in Psalm 16. And in these times that we find ourselves now, I think we all really could use some assurance. We're going to read through these 11 verses and we're going to kind of talk about their meanings. But I'm not going to ask you to use a lot of bandwidth here. I feel like we all have been doing a lot of thinking. And I'm also not going to be challenging your emotions a lot. Instead, I hope this will just be encouraging and hopeful, comforting, and bring all of us an assurance that we all really need right now. It's been said about the Psalms that they carry great power, that the words themselves, when they're spoken, carry great power. One rabbi in particular, his name is Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, that's quite a mouthful, said, "Know that the chapters of Psalms shatter all barriers. They ascend higher and still higher with no interference. They prostrate themselves in supplication before the master of all worlds, and they effect and accomplish with kindness and compassion." Read that last line again about all of the Psalms. And they effect and accomplish with kindness and compassion. And that really is a very powerful thought. So what do we find in Psalm 16 then can affect and accomplish with kindness and compassion? Hey, Julie, so great to have you join us, honey, from New York. Hey, daughter-in-law from Taiwan, good to have you join us, along with, I'm sure my granddaughter is with you too. Good to have you all. Hey, Randell, Shabbat Shalom, great to have you join us. So again, this Psalm 16, what do we find that can affect, as this quote says, affect and accomplish with kindness and compassion? I love those words together. I just think they're so beautiful. Affect and accomplish with kindness and compassion. So we're going to kind of break down this text. And again, I'm not going to ask you to use a lot of bandwidth, okay? This is just going to be chill time, and we're just going to kind of talk through it. The Psalm starts out Miktam by David. Miktam by David. Now, Psalm 16 is called a Miktam. There's 5 Miktams of David in the Psalms. This is one, and then 4 others in 56, Psalm 56 to 60. So, what's a Miktam? Well, we're really actually not sure what a Miktam is. There are a few possibilities. Some people think it means golden, like a golden word. And other people think it's connected to a word meaning to cover. Like these 5 times they're hidden truth. They're kind of concealed and that until they're revealed to us. Some suggest it means a mystery poem. Or others suggest Miktam is like an inscribing, like an etching. And there's also a reference to the musical arrangement of the psalm, as in many other of David's introductions. We can assume this is a song. And we all know that music has great power. All of those meanings are beautiful, whether it's one or all of them. But we definitely can connect to the fact that the Psalms, most of them are songs. And again, songs are very powerful, and especially in times like this. Fear melts away when you hear a spiritual song. Zephaniah 3:15 and 17 says, "Never again will you fear any harm. The Lord your God is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing." Can you imagine that picture of God rejoicing over us while he's singing over us? That's just such a beautiful way to think about this, about song. So let's begin with the chapter rather. Protect me, verse 1, God. And again, I'm going to break down some of the meanings of these words. Protect me is shamar, and it means to keep, to watch over, to have charge of, to save life. That's a powerful word, shamar. Shamar me, God, for you are my refuge. And that word is chasa, and it means put hope in and to run to for protection. And this is how David begins this psalm of his assurance. David takes refuge in Yahweh's protection. Now, what does this concept of refuge mean to us, and the fact that we kind of run under it for literally to be covered over? If you've ever been in Israel and gone to En Gedi, that was one of the most amazing places I've ever seen. It was just this oasis of waterfalls in the midst of the desert that David came upon when he really needed to be refreshed. And Ryan, hey O'Dane, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. Diana, Shabbat Shalom, honey. Great to have you join us. And Ryan, my son, and I went to Israel together, and we walked up this place to get to En Gedi, and it was really it was quite a climb, and it was over desert rocks of Israel, and it was really stinking hot, as deserts can be, right? So again, this place, this oasis of waterfalls in the midst of the desert that David came upon, and we read upon in scriptures. When Ryan and I went to it, we had to work to get there. We didn't pray that En Gedi would just come to us. You don't pray for an oasis and wait for it to come to you. Taking refuge is a verb that actually requires going to the place of protection. So when we think of this concept that David was saying about taking refuge, we have to understand that it's us who go to the refuge. We draw close. So let me ask you, how are you doing with that in this time that we find ourselves in isolation, with all the stuff going on, with all the fears that literally are bubbling up all around us, if not in us? How are you doing with drawing close to that place of refuge? Let me see in your comments where you're finding it, or how you're finding it, or if you're still looking for it. What practices do you find move you towards Him that is your refuge? Again, this is the concept of us moving towards Him. We don't just stand and ask it to come in our head. We move towards Him. So let me see in your comments how you're doing with that. Verse 2, we continue. And again, this is going to be simple. I said to Adonai, you are my Lord. I have nothing good outside of you. This is such a profound statement, and it's so simple, really, and yet so profound. The phrase is Adonai Ata, and it's simply a declaration of belief. It's what David is saying he believes. It is an obligation to action. And what he's saying here is when we stay close within his boundaries, we are connected. When we move outside of the boundaries, the exact kind of translation of this in English is outside of the Lord, nothing good. So what's outside of the boundaries that we have, that God gives us? Again, David says it, nothing good. Julie says, pushed it out of a desperation feeling, knowing he's the only way to peace. Good. Pushed it out of a desperation. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Again, we get desperate and that's it. That's all we have left. And that's okay. Oftentimes in that concept of refuge, Jules, people find themselves literally with no other hope and running to the place of refuge. That's a very real concept. Alicia says, got on a plane? Flew to a physical refuge. Yes, you did. I am grateful and aware of the privilege, still trying to get more of refuge state mentally. Yeah, that's good. Alicia just definitely experienced a physical refuge from her country of origin, in a place where she felt safe, and she flew out of the UK in the midst of all the crazy there and just landed in refuge, and she's isolating. Aaron's also isolating in Canada. I'm unsure if I'm going toward refuge. Is such a time of waiting. Yes, that I feel stagnant, maybe meditating. Yeah, that's such a good point, Aaron, that we're all just kind of waiting, right? Waiting to see what happens. Even some people are talking to me about waiting to see if they get it. Just waiting. You're hearing all different kinds of timelines here, and even some people are very uncertain in where they're going to go. And so, how do you move towards refuge while you're literally stuck and waiting? That's a really good question. And yeah, for me, Aaron, it's for sure meditation. I also do some things too, like I'm really reading the Psalms a lot, and I really find myself praying them. And I'm reading peaceful things. I'm actually reading Rumi right now, which is really peaceful to my heart. Hey, Phoebe, good to see you. Nicole says, starting my mornings with a meditative yoga practice. I do that as well, Nicole, just to connect, which focuses my mind on something I'm doing with my body. Absolutely. I'm finding time to listen to music. Yep. That focuses on peace and security. Beth is saying, very angry toward the injustice, and my financial state is getting worse and worse. Makes it hard to run to him. Hey, Faith, good to have you join us, honey. Shabbat Shalom. I'm doing a psalm a day and a 15 meditation. Yeah, Beth, I think you were on with us last week too, when I was mentioning that fear and anger, when they join together in all of this, they're sort of greater than the sum of their parts kind of thing. That's really where I was too, because I was getting so pissed at what was going on in our political world with greed and crazy and Faith. I just read what you posted today about new EPA making new laws, and every time I read it, I just go from 0 to 100. I can get so angry at the injustice, and I'm hypersensitive right now. And I notice that fear and injustice, you don't want them working together because they actually create something greater. Okay, so the whole is greater than the sum of their parts kind of thing. So, yeah, I really limit what I view. I want to be aware because I don't want to disengage, and I know people are really hurting. I mean, we are too. I'm the only one working in my house too right now, so I get it. But in some way, we're going to have to learn how to compartmentalize those things and really connect to things that give us peace and calm and all these practices, because it is really important. And literally, the collective conscience in the world right now is you can literally feel the bubbles of fear, right? So you don't want to connect to that bigger, larger picture. You want to connect and also even share peace and love and calm and health and all of that. So it is very, very important that we take a lot of our focus and attention and make time out. And thankfully, we can do that for those of us who are isolating. Hey, Rebecca, good to have you join us, honey. Shabbat Shalom. Um, and again, what this literally is saying is, outside of the Lord, this verse, nothing good. Nothing good outside of the Lord. So let's go to verse 3. Faith is saying, I have a habit tracker, and on it I switch my daily habits. Oh, cool, Faith. I aspire to do something bigger than myself. So whether it's signing a petition, writing to a politician, donating to a food bank, that's awesome, Faith. That is fantastic. Some sort of tracker that tracks daily habits. And Randall is again saying to connect deeply to the word and reflect on faithfulness and listen to spiritual songs. I think we all are very connected and aware of what we need to do. Yeah, Faith, if you want to share that app, that's awesome. So verse 3 is, the holy people in the land are the ones who are worthy of honor. All my pleasure is in them. And this is really an important part of this psalm. And again, David in this whole psalm is sort of giving where his assurance comes from. And he's feeling a sense of joy that comes from a like-minded, connected community. And that is so important. Hey, Barika, Shabbat Shalom, honey. Good to have you join us. Even when I go off on my little rant about what's going on politically, right? You all are right there with me. You know exactly what I'm feeling. You're feeling the same exact thing, some of you even more so. We are on the same page, right? We care about the same things. And there is a very important thing that David is saying here. He has this sense of joy that is comes from this connection of a like-minded community. And this is extremely important now, especially in these times of isolation. Are you feeling connected to like-minded people? And when I say connected, I mean really in a real way. And social media is okay if it's true connections. Too much of the other side can make you think the world is crazy. I was watching my mayor talk today about the kind of lockdown that Tampa is in right now, and it was a live Facebook post, and I wanted to know what we were allowed to do and not allowed to do because I still walk outside of my house. And while she was talking, there was all these comments about how this whole thing was fake news, okay, and other derogatory descriptions of this virus that comes from the top down, which I'm not even going to say again. It makes my head want to explode. So as those things come up and I'm watching it, I'm quick trying to get rid of the comments, right? Because we can't just expose ourselves to the crazy whenever it wants to download into our heart. We will not be able to stay in our peace. Okay, so that's very important to know that. And it's important to connect to those in a community who are like minded. Very, very, very important. Verse 4, we're going to continue with David's words. Those who run after another God multiply their sorrows. To such gods I will not offer drink offerings or blood or take their names on my lips. Okay, now what does this mean to us? Run after means to pant or to pursue hard. And David says, I'm not going to run after these kind of false gods. And the offerings of blood and saying the names are part of these polytheistic practices that David was referencing. However, today we have these pagan polytheistic gods practice very much alive and well. One of them is racism. Hello. One of them is greed. Hello. Today we live in a culture of serving multiple gods for many reasons. For some people it's security, for some people it's comfort, for some people it's protection. Some people get their identity in these gods. Whether it's the greeting going after profit in other people's times of crisis, or it's people clinging to some sort of political party or religious institution that they think will protect them. Things we think as divine in the sense of security and other gods, David is saying, I'm not co-signing with you. I'm not sharing in these practices. Not only am I not going to share them, they're not even going to come from my lips. And that's a really important thing that David shows us. In order to have assurance, it's important that we realize what we say out of our mouth and what we allow in the gates to our heart. We have to be careful, especially now, especially what's going on. So this is a good way, what David is saying, to protect our hearts. Verse 5, Adonai, my assigned portion, my cup, you safeguard my share. God, actually, what David is saying here is God is David's share, and he trusts his provisions and his will for his life. So what David is saying here is, look, what I have, I know that it comes from you, Lord, and I trust you with my provisions and your will for my life. And then in verse 6, this is one of my favorite verses. I just love the wording. It says, pleasant places. And the Hebrew word is naim for pleasant, and it means delightful or sweet. Pleasant places were measured out for me. I am content with my heritage. Now, here's the interesting thing about this way of relating to what you have and your boundaries. David's boundaries were measured for him. and he finds contentment with where he is placed. He's got vision, he's got hopes, he works, and he even fights, but he also rests and trusts. And how many of us are even struggling when someone tells us we can't go outside? Uh, I in our neighborhood they have helicopters that kind of fly around, and every time I see that helicopter, the hippie in me wants to give them a nice sign, and it's not the peace sign, right? Because to me, that's Big Brother watching me. Now I'm just being honest. I'm just being transparent here. That's just how I initially react to the helicopters. However, the helicopters are actually trying to keep people safe. And if there's a gathering someplace, they want to know, and they're trying to save on the reserves of the police. And if there's a gathering, they're going to tell them, oh, they're gathering over here, go and break it up. And nobody's going to jail. It's just they're trying to keep people safe. But I struggle with somebody telling me where I can and cannot go, right? We always want to be somewhere else. Even when we know it's the right place for us to be, we want to be somewhere else. But contentment, this contentment David is talking about, makes where we are where we should be. I'm going to say that again, and it actually sounds very Buddhist, doesn't it? Contentment makes where we are where we should be. And that he calls a pleasant place. So even for those of us who are struggling, or we're not where we want to be, or we don't have our jobs, and we're confused and we're scared and all that, where we are right now is where we should be. And we can call that a pleasant place because it's where God has us. And how do you know it's where God has us? Because if it's where we find ourselves, we trust that that's where God has us. And that is a profound thought to wrap our brains around. Verse 7. Let's continue with David. I hope this is comforting. Aaron, let me just, after we study verse by verse, would it be possible to read it from top to bottom, all the way through together? I'd love to hear it all again after we understand it more. No worries if that's not possible. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Sure. Verse 7, I bless Adonai, my counselor, at night, my inmost being. Kilia is the word kidneys, which literally means inner being instructs me. That's a really cool concept as well. My inner being instructs me. Proverbs 20:27 says, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inward parts. I love that verse. That's Proverbs 20:27. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inward parts. Now, the lamp, which is God, is enlightenment, and it's instructing us, David says here. He says that at night, when he sleeps, his counselor speaks in his inner being and instructs him. And this can really happen when we're in rested sleep. So let me ask you this. How has your sleep been? How has your sleep been? Because that's really a place where God can speak to you, where your own heart shows you things, where your own brain can actually wash itself. That's actually a physiological thing that happens. It's an important time. Yeah, oh wow is right? And verse 8, I always set Adonai before me. With him at my right hand, I can never be moved. And this word for moved is the word mot, and it means to totter or to slip. So again, it is, I always set Adonai before me, with him at my right hand. And right hand has to do with your power and your authority and where you go and all of that. I can never be moved. I can never slip. David says, I can never totter over and I can never slip. I'm following the one that goes before me, and therefore I can have a sure footing. Abraham was looking for a city whose foundations cannot be shaken. David's crying out for a protection that can never be moved. In fact, everything on earth is in movement, isn't it? Energy is constantly moving. It's not the change or the movement that is bad. Actually, the whole earth is designed for that. But what David and Abraham are longing to find is a stability amidst instability. Our hearts long for a foundation that cannot be crumbled. We can have stability in change. We can have stability in shifting times and constant movement. We can even have stability when everything around us is crumbling. We can be standing on something that David says is absolutely unshakable. That's so encouraging. Verse 9. So my heart is glad, my glory rejoices, and my body too rests in safety. For you will not abandon me to show. You will not let your faithful one see the abyss. What this reference is really about is it's being separated from God. Okay, it's being in a dark place, separating from God. Verse 11, you make me know the path of life. So David is in a state of contentment, of joy, and his body rests in that place. When your mind is grounded and your heart is full, your body, your physical body can rest. And how many of us really are kind of buzzing a little bit right now, right? From a little bit being anxious. Julie's saying early, bad, restless sleep. Aaron's saying, yeah, the dreams have been insane. Yes, Beth, because your brain is processing what's going on with everything here. So yes, your dreams are definitely going to be a little angsty. But again, they're kind of filing and downloading things. Early to bed and early to rise. Jules is saying feel more in alignment with the daylight, much more opposite than my restaurant schedule. Yeah, that's good. That's how Matthew is too. Alicia's saying fighting jet lag, so nodding off at random times and then waking up at random times. Yeah, right. That's going to be part of your process, I'm sure, Alicia. Absolutely. So let's continue. In your presence, this is amazing. In your presence is unbounded joy. And that Hebrew word is the word soba. And it means unbounded is soba, and it means to be satiated, abundance, just overflowing. And joy is the word simcha, which you're familiar with that word for simchat Torah, and it means to be glad, to have mirth, even to dance, right? In your hand, eternal, and that's the phrase netzach, which means perpetual, continual, eternal, delight. And delight is the word naim, which is pleasant, delightful, and sweet. And again, in your presence is unbounded joy. In your right hand, eternal delight. I think I'm going to go back now and read all the verses, and I may have a little bit of pausing. I can't get to my Bible because it's in this cupboard and I would have to move everything. So I'm going to read the whole psalm again before we close, and then I'm going to wrap up the ends, okay? So again, this is a miktam, which has some really neat connotations from David. Protect me, God, for you are my refuge. I said to Adonai, you are my Lord. I have nothing good outside of you. The holy people in the land are the ones who are worthy of honor. All my pleasure is in them. Those who run after another god multiply their sorrows. To such gods I will not offer drink offerings of blood or take their names on my lips. My assigned portion, my cup is Adonai. You safeguard my share. Pleasant places were measured out for me. I am content with my heritage. I bless Adonai, my counselor. At night, my inmost being instructs me. I always set Adonai before me with him. At my right hand, I can never be moved. So my heart is glad, my glory rejoices, and my body too rests in safety. For you will not abandon me to Sheol. You will not let your faithful one see the abyss. You make me know the path of life. In your presence is unbounded joy. In your right hand, eternal delight. That's so beautiful. Unbounded joy, overflowing, no end. And eternal light means delight forever. Now, let's recap this by saying this. You can't get fuller than overflowing, and you can't get longer than forever, right? So David has an absolute assurance that nothing, not even death, could separate him from the Lord. This is the one thing that is not moved, and it can never be taken from you. Even in death, it's only increased, right? What if we lived our lives with this kind of assurance? This is the assurance that I think we really all would like right now, that we would really all benefit from. Randall's saying, I sleep most of the time, for I try not to worry about what's outside of my control. That's so good, Randall, which is everything, right? By focusing on the Lord, he gives me a measure of peace that guards my mind and heart. Absolutely, Randall. Who's Louise? Which Louise? I just saw Aaron say, hi, Louise. I wonder if it's Louise Genuine you just saw. Faith, it says blessed assurance, which is really a blessed thing, absolutely. And again, this is the assurance that he has. So let's look at what this means. Joy comes from the unshakable assurance that God is with me. Joy comes from the unshakable assurance that God is with me. You see, this is what David knew, even though he didn't know everything that was going on in his world. This is where he got this unshakable assurance. We're going to close our time together with the Shabbos lighting of the candles. And I want to remind all of you, if you want prayer, if you want to share what you're going through in a more personal way, most all of you are part of the Sabbath Collective members group too. Please post prayers on that. Let us know what's happening in your life. Anything that you need, please let us all know. We are in this together, absolutely. And the cool thing about us is, as churches are trying to figure out how to do this thing online because they can't meet, we already got this. So let's really use what we already know how to do and really come together and support each other in prayer. So we're going to end our time together by lighting the Shabbos candles. And again, we're entering into the Sabbath, which is our time of rest, our time of peace, our time of shutting off and not working. And traditionally, the mothers of the home light these candles, which again connect us to their meanings. And in this time, I want to just say this blessing over you. Let it really go into your heart. And I want to encourage you, read this Psalm, Psalm 16. Read it tonight, read it tomorrow, read other Psalms, Psalm 91, Psalm 23. Remember that rabbinic quote that we talked about in the very beginning, and I'm going to post this, that these words are powerful even in and of themselves. Now may Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine on you and show you his favor. May Adonai lift up his face toward you and give you peace. I love you all. Shabbat Shalom.